2 years had passed since humanity left Council space. The galaxy was burning, not with fire but with chaos. Trade routes that had been safe for centuries were now dangerous. Colonies that had thrived were now ruins. The galactic economy, which had grown steadily for generations, was collapsing. The Zelthari were the first to break. Their merchant empire had been built on safe trade routes that humans had protected. Now those routes were hunting grounds for pirates. Zelthari ships disappeared weekly. Their profits turned to losses. Their crystal cities, once shining with wealth, now dimmed with worry. A small ship approached the border of human space. It carried a Zelthari diplomat named Kreth, along with 2 guards. They had been sent with one mission: bring the humans back. Commander Greg Palmer received them at Outpost Kepler, a human station that sat right on the edge of human territory. Greg was 38, a career officer who had no love for the Zelthari. He remembered the vote. He remembered the speeches about how humans were barbarians. Kreth stood in the meeting room, his crystal form flickering nervously. "Commander Palmer, thank you for seeing us." "I am listening," Greg said. He did not offer them seats. This was not a friendly meeting. The Council requests the return of human security forces. We recognize that we may have been hasty in our previous decision. Greg almost laughed. Hasty. That was the word they chose. You expelled us. You called us violent and dangerous. Now you want us back? The situation has changed, Kreth said carefully. The frontier zones have become unstable. We need experienced forces to restore order. You need us to clean up your mess. Greg leaned back in his chair. What are you offering? Kreth brightened with hope. Full reinstatement to the Council. Generous contracts for security services. Even a seat with veto power on military matters. Greg let him finish, then shook his head. No, the Zelthari's glow dimmed to almost nothing. No, but we are offering everything. You are offering us a chance to die for you again, to spend our blood protecting your colonies, to work for your benefit. Greg stood up. We did that for 300 years, and you thanked us by throwing us out. The answer is no. Please, you must understand. Colonies are being destroyed. Thousands are dying. Thousands died before, and we saved them. We bled for you. We lost people protecting you. Greg's voice was hard now. Where were you when we needed you? When the Council voted to expel us, where were the Zelthari voices defending us? Kreth had no answer. They had voted with the majority. They had been part of the problem. I will send your offer to Earth, Greg said, but I can tell you what they will say. If humans return, it will be as contractors, not as friends, and the price will be high. The Zelthari left, their ship disappearing into the darkness. Greg sent the report to Earth and waited. The response came from Director Helen Cross herself. Short and clear, declined. Across the galaxy, others were suffering too. The Perrine had managed to stop the plague, but barely. Thousands had died because they could not replicate the human cure properly. Their scientists worked day and night, trying to rebuild knowledge they had lost when humans took their data and left. Dr. Lisa Chen received messages from them weekly, begging for help, offering payment, promising anything if humans would just send medical teams back. She read each one and filed them away. Earth had made its decision. No help beyond basic information. Meanwhile, the attacks grew worse. The Threxian swarm had grown bold. They were no longer just raiding remote colonies. They were pushing deeper into Council space, taking major settlements. The Vryn fleet fought them, but every battle ended badly. General Kresh stood on the bridge of his flagship watching another colony burn. His fleet had arrived too late again. The Threxians had hit hard and disappeared before the Vryn could respond. It was the same pattern every time. His tactical officer, a young Vryn named Soth, looked at the data with confusion. Sir, how did they know our patrol routes? They attacked exactly when we were furthest away. Kresh knew the answer, but saying it out loud hurt. Because we are predictable. Our patrols follow schedules. Our responses follow procedures. The Threxians have learned our patterns, but we have always operated this way. It worked before. It worked before because humans were also patrolling. They did not follow schedules. They moved randomly, unpredictably. Raiders never knew where human ships would be. Kresh felt old suddenly. He had been fighting for 40 years. The humans understood war in a way we do not. Soth was quiet for a moment. Can we learn their methods? We can try, but they spent 300 years perfecting those methods. We cannot learn in months what took them centuries. On Earth, President Nathan Cole met with his military advisors. The situation was clear. The galaxy was falling apart, and soon they would have no choice but to ask humanity back. But how that return happened would define the relationship for generations. "We need a new structure," General Lisa Howard said. She had been working on this for months. "If we go back as part of the council, we will be in the same position as before, working for them, dying for them. Eventually they will forget our value again. So what do you suggest?" Nathan asked. Lisa pulled up her proposal. "We form a private military company, Human Defense Consolidated. It will be backed by Earth's government but operate independently. If the council wants our protection, they pay for it. Market rates." "They will never agree to that," one of the other advisors said. "They will when they are desperate enough," Lisa replied. "Right now they still think they can handle it themselves. Give it 6 more months. They will be begging us to return, and they will pay whatever we ask." Nathan looked at the proposal. It was harsh, but maybe that was what was needed. Friendship had not worked. Maybe a business relationship would be clearer. Back at the frontier, Jake Morrison had been asked to lead the new company. He was reluctant at first. He had been a soldier his whole life, fighting for ideals like freedom and justice. Now they were asking him to be a mercenary. But Amy Fisher, who had agreed to join as his second-in-command, made a good point. "The ideals do not change. We will still be protecting people. We will still be fighting evil. The only difference is we are getting paid for it and we are not giving them a choice to kick us out again." Jake thought about that. They had fought for free before and been expelled. Maybe being mercenaries was more honest. At least everyone would know where they stood. 3 months after the Zelthari delegation was turned away, another ship approached human space. This one carried a Vryn general named Kresh. Greg Palmer met him with the same cold politeness he had shown the Zelthari. Kresh was different, though. He did not beg. He did not plead. He simply laid out the situation. "My people are dying. Colonies are falling. The council is collapsing. We need help, and we are willing to pay." Greg studied the old general. Kresh had fought alongside humans before. He had been one of the few who had voted against expulsion. "What are you offering?" "Whatever you want. Earth names the price. We will pay it, even if it bankrupts you." Kresh's reptilian face showed something that might have been a smile. "What good is money if we are all dead? Name your price, Commander." Greg sent the message to Earth. This time the response was different. Director Helen Cross sent detailed terms. Humans would return as contractors. They would control all frontier security. They would have sovereign territory. They would answer to Earth, not the Council. And the payment would be enormous. Kresh read the terms and did not hesitate. "Agreed. When can you start?" "When the contracts are signed," Greg said. "And one more thing. If we come back and you try to expel us again, we will leave and never return, no matter how much you beg." "Understood," Kresh said quietly. "We will not make the same mistake twice." But signing the contracts took time. The council had to debate. The Zelthari were angry about the terms. The Perrine complained about the cost. While they argued, more colonies died. The Threxian swarm pushed deeper. Other hostile species, seeing the council's weakness, joined the attacks. The galaxy was learning that safety was not free. It had to be earned or bought. And humanity held the key to both. The first 3 months were peaceful. The Zelthari expanded their trade into former human zones, buying and selling with enthusiasm. Their merchant ships traveled routes that had once been patrolled by human warships, but they saw no need for such protection now. The galaxy was at peace, they said. The violent humans were gone. Commander Lucas Bennett sat in his quarters on Earth, reading reports that still came in from their monitoring stations. These were small, hidden outposts that watched but did not interact. They listened to galactic communications and recorded everything. What Lucas saw made him uncomfortable. The alien species were celebrating, yes, but they were also struggling. Small things at first. A Koltesh mining ship had disappeared near the frontier. Probably just engine failure, they said. A Perrine cargo vessel went silent. Maybe their communications broke. A research station stopped responding. Could be a solar storm, Lucas knew better. He had spent 15 years patrolling those regions. He knew what lived out there in the dark. The Threxian swarm, for one. They were raiders, a species that traveled in huge groups, attacking and taking what they wanted. Humans had kept them boxed in, trapped in their home systems by constant patrols and quick responses. But there were no patrols now. Sophie Kane, Lucas's former navigator, now worked in Earth's intelligence division. She came to his office with a datapad, her face worried. "You need to see this." The report was from one of their hidden monitoring posts. A Koltesh colony had sent a distress signal. Raiders were attacking. The message was desperate, begging for help. Then nothing. The colony went dark, all communications stopped. "Did anyone respond?" Lucas asked. Sophie shook her head. The Vryn sent 3 cruisers, but it took them 5 days to arrive. The colony was destroyed by then. Everyone dead or taken? Lucas felt cold. 5 days. When humans had patrolled that sector, response time had been 8 hours. 8 hours had been the difference between life and death. What did they find? Threxian ships. At least 20 of them. They hit the colony hard and fast, took everything of value, killed anyone who resisted. Sophie sat down heavily. The Vryn cruisers tried to pursue, but the Threxians jumped away. They know the Vryn fleet cannot catch them. Lucas thought about that. The Threxians had feared human ships because humans were faster, better trained, and absolutely relentless. If you attacked a human-protected colony, you would be hunted down no matter how far you ran. But the Vryn? They followed procedures. They had rules about pursuit distances and engagement protocols. The raiders could work around that. On the Zelthari homeworld, the Council was receiving reports that contradicted their celebration. More ships were disappearing. More colonies were going silent. The numbers were small at first, easy to dismiss as coincidence, but they kept growing. Admiral Vresh of the Vryn fleet stood before the Council, his reptilian face showing rare uncertainty. "We have lost contact with 7 colonies in the frontier zones. We believe they have been attacked." "Attacked by whom?" the Zelthari speaker asked, his crystal form flickering with confusion. "The Threxian swarm primarily, but we have also detected Corvan pirates, Zath raiders, and at least 3 other hostile groups. They are all moving into areas that were previously secure. Previously secure because of human patrols," a voice said from the back. The Miari ambassador, small and gray-skinned, stood to speak. "We warned you this would happen." The Zelthari's glow brightened with irritation. "We do not need humans to maintain security. We have fleets. We have weapons." "You have fleets designed for defense," the Miari said quietly. "The humans had fleets designed for war. There is a difference." The Council erupted in argument. The Vryn insisted they could handle the situation. The Perrine wanted to increase defensive positions. The Koltesh demanded action to recover their lost colonies, but nobody mentioned bringing the humans back. That would mean admitting they had made a mistake. On Earth, President Nathan Cole sat in his office with General Lisa Howard. They were reviewing the same reports that Lucas and Sophie had seen. The galaxy was falling apart faster than they had predicted. "How long until they ask us back?" Lisa asked. She was 52, a career military officer who had fought in 3 major conflicts. She had no illusions about what was happening. 6 months, maybe a year, Nathan said. He was younger, only 45, but he had been dealing with the Council for a decade. "The Zelthari are too proud to ask quickly. They will wait until things are much worse. People are dying out there." Lisa's voice was flat. "Colonies are being wiped out. Should we help?" Nathan looked at her. It was a question he had been asking himself every day. As a human being, he wanted to help. As president of Earth, he had to think about his own people first. "We offered help for 300 years, he said finally. "We bled for them. We died for them. And they thanked us by throwing us out. If we go running back now, it teaches them nothing." Lisa nodded slowly. She understood, but she did not like it. "What about humanitarian aid? Medical supplies? Information? Information, maybe. We are not monsters." Nathan pulled up a message on his screen. "The Perrine have asked for help with a disease outbreak. Xanther plague. Remember it?" Lisa remembered. It was a nasty disease that had killed millions before humans had found a cure. "We are going to help them?" "We will send them the formula for the cure. Basic information only. No doctors. No support teams. They wanted independence from humanity. They can have it." The message was sent through official channels. Dr. Lisa Chen, Earth's top expert on alien biology, had written it herself. It was cold and professional. "Here is the cure. Good luck. Nothing more." On the Perrine homeworld, the scientists received the message with mixed feelings. Relief that humans were willing to help at all. Shame that they needed to ask. Fear that the basic formula would not be enough. They were right to be afraid. The cure required precise timing and specific conditions. The human files they had kept from before the expulsion were incomplete. They had never bothered to learn the full process because human medical teams had always been available to help. Now those teams were gone, and people were dying because no one knew the exact steps. Back in Council space, the attacks continued. The Vryn fleet fought bravely, but they were stretched too thin. They had 6 fleets covering territory that humans had patrolled with 30. Their response times grew longer. More colonies were lost. Jake Morrison, now promoted to admiral, watched the news feeds from his apartment on Earth. He saw Vryn ships destroyed by raiders. He saw colonies burning. He saw the faces of people he had once protected, now dead because the Council had decided humans were too dangerous. Amy Fisher came to visit him one evening. She had left active service and was now teaching at the military academy. "Are you watching the news?" she asked. "Every day." Jake poured her a drink. "It is hard not to. Do you think we should go back?" Amy asked the question that everyone was thinking. Jake took a long time to answer. "Not like before. If we go back now, it has to be different. We cannot be their guard dogs anymore, working for free and getting kicked when they feel safe. So what do? We wait. We let them see what the galaxy is really like without us. Then when they are desperate enough, we return. But on our terms this time." Amy looked at her former captain. He had always been a good man, fair and honest, but there was something harder in him now. Something that had not been there before the expulsion. The galaxy was learning a painful lesson. Safety had a cost. For 300 years, humanity had paid that cost in blood and effort, asking for nothing but friendship in return. Now the bill was coming due, and the price was higher than anyone had imagined. 5 years after humanity's return, the galaxy looked stable again. Trade routes were secure. Colonies were protected. Pirates stayed in their home systems, afraid to venture into patrolled space. On the surface, everything seemed better. But beneath that surface, something fundamental had changed. Admiral Jake Morrison stood before the Galactic Council, invited to give a report on security operations. He was 51 now, with gray at his temples and lines around his eyes. The years had been kind to him professionally, but hard personally. He missed the days when he fought for ideals instead of contracts. The council chamber was fuller than it had been 3 years ago. Species that had withdrawn were returning, drawn back by the stability that human forces provided. But the atmosphere was different. There was no warmth, no friendship, just business. The Zelthari speaker, a new one now since the old speaker had died, began the meeting. "Admiral Morrison, we have asked you here to discuss the possibility of reducing human presence in council space. The security situation has improved significantly. Perhaps we can renegotiate the terms of our contracts." Jake had been expecting this. Humans had solved the problems, made the galaxy safe again. Now the council wanted to save money. It was predictable. "The security situation has improved because of human presence," Jake said calmly. "Remove that presence and the problems return. You know this. Surely we can maintain security with our own forces now," the Perrine delegate said. "We have learned from your methods." Jake looked at her steadily. "Have you? Tell me, how many patrol routes does your fleet run? How many intelligence assets do you have monitoring hostile species? How many ships can you scramble within an hour of a distress call?" The Perrine delegate had no answer. The truth was that council species had not learned. They had relied entirely on human forces for 5 years. Their own militaries had actually grown smaller, not larger. Why maintain expensive fleets when you could pay humans to do the work? "The contracts can be renegotiated," Jake said finally, "but the rates will not decrease. If anything, they may increase. The galaxy is stable because we make it stable. That has value." The Zelthari's crystal form flickered with frustration. "You hold us hostage. We have no choice but to pay." "You have every choice," Jake replied. "You can cancel the contracts. You can build your own security forces. You can defend yourselves. Nobody is forcing you to hire us." But they all knew that was not really true. The council species had become dependent. Their economies had adjusted to outsourcing security. Their populations had grown comfortable again. Going back to the chaos of 3 years ago was unthinkable. "Is there no friendship left between our peoples?" the Miari ambassador asked sadly. She was old now, Had been around during humanity's first expulsion. Must everything be transactions and contracts? Jake felt something twist in his chest. He liked the Miari. They had always been kind, always spoken up for humanity when they could. Friendship requires trust, Ambassador. Trust that was broken cannot be restored quickly. He paused, choosing his words carefully. My generation remembers what happened. We remember fighting for you, bleeding for you, dying for you. We remember offering friendship freely. And we remember being told to leave, being called dangerous and barbaric. The chamber was silent. Some delegates looked uncomfortable. Others looked angry. Maybe future generations will be different, Jake continued. Maybe in 100 years, humans and council species will be friends again. But that bridge was burned 3 years ago, and it will take time to rebuild. Until then, we have contracts. They may be cold, but they are honest. After the meeting, Jake walked through the council station. He passed aliens of a dozen species, most of whom avoided eye contact. There was fear there now and resentment. Humans were no longer the friendly helpers. They were the powerful contractors who controlled the galaxy's security. Amy Fisher met him at the docking bay. She had been promoted to captain now, commanding her own ship. How did it go? About as expected. They want cheaper protection. I told them no. Will they accept that? Jake shrugged. They have no choice. What are they going to do, expel us again? They both laughed, but it was bitter laughter. There was no joy in the situation. Humanity had returned to power, yes, but at the cost of relationships that had taken centuries to build. Back on Earth, President Nathan Cole was finishing his second term. He had overseen humanity's return and the establishment of the new order. History would remember him as the president who made humanity wealthy and powerful. But he wondered if he would be remembered as the president who also made humanity alone. He met with Director Helen Cross one last time before leaving office. Do you think we did the right thing? He asked her. Helen, who was retiring as well, considered the question. We did what was necessary. Humanity needed to learn not to be taken advantage of. The galaxy needed to learn that our protection had value. But was it worth the cost? We have money and power now, but we have no friends. We have something better, Helen said. We have respect. They may not love us, but they respect us. They will never casually discard us again. Nathan thought about that. Maybe she was right. Maybe respect was enough. But in his heart, he missed the old days when human ships were greeted with joy instead of nervous politeness. Out in the frontier zones, Rachel Stone commanded a fleet of 40 ships now. Human Defense Consolidated had grown massive. They employed over 1 million people, operated hundreds of stations, and controlled security for 3/4 of council space. She received a distress call from a remote colony. Threxian raiders trying their luck again. Rachel's fleet jumped in within an hour, but by the time they arrived, the colony had already driven the raiders off themselves. The colonists, a mix of Perrine and Koltesh, had fought back with surprising effectiveness. Rachel contacted the colony governor, a Perrine named Tesh. Impressive defense. Where did you learn to fight like that? Tesh's face showed something that might have been embarrassment. We have been training in secret, studying human tactics. We cannot afford to be helpless forever. Rachel felt a small spark of respect. Good. Self-reliance is important. Will you report this to the council? Tesh asked nervously. We are not supposed to build military forces outside of official channels. I am not the council's enforcer, Rachel said. You paid us to protect you, not to control you. What you do with your own people is your business. After ending the call, Rachel thought about what she had seen. The council species were learning. Slowly, carefully, they were starting to rebuild their own capabilities. Maybe in another generation, they would not need human protection anymore. Maybe then the relationship could change again. Years passed. The galaxy adjusted to the new order. Human Defense Consolidated became a fixture of life as normal as the stars themselves. Children grew up never knowing the time before human contractors. The old animosities faded, replaced by simple acceptance. Jake Morrison eventually retired, handing control of Human Defense Consolidated to younger officers. He lived quietly on Earth, writing memoirs that few people read. In them, he wrote honestly about what had happened. The betrayal, the anger, the return, and the cold peace that followed. On the last page he wrote, "We left in silence because there was nothing left to say. They had made their choice and we made ours. The galaxy paid the price of that silence and humanity collected the debt. Perhaps someday we will be friends again. Perhaps someday trust will return. But that day is not today, and maybe that is okay. Some lessons need to be learned the hard way. The Galactic Council eventually erected a memorial in their chamber. It honored all those who had died in the 3 years between humanity's expulsion and return. Thousands of names, dozens of species, all lost because the galaxy forgot that peace required vigilance. At the bottom of the memorial was a simple inscription: "They left in silence." We paid in full. It was visited by school children and politicians, by veterans and civilians. Some came to mourn. Some came to remember. All came to ensure that the lesson would never be forgotten. The humans had left once, peacefully and quietly. If they ever left again, it would be because they chose to, not because they were forced. That much, at least, the galaxy had learned. In the end, humanity did not conquer the galaxy. They did not dominate or oppress. They simply existed, powerful and distant, protecting those who paid for protection and ignoring those who did not. It was not the relationship anyone had wanted, but it was the relationship that had been earned. The humans had left in silence. The galaxy had paid the price, and now both lived with the consequences of choices made long ago. In a chamber full of delegates who thought they knew better than they did. Some mistakes could be corrected, some could be managed, but some changed everything forever. This was one of those. The chamber was enormous, built to hold representatives from 40 different species. Tall windows showed the stars beyond, millions of them scattered across the black like diamonds. Claire Morton stood in the center of it all, her blue uniform pressed and perfect, her face showing nothing. She had been Earth's voice in this place for 7 years. Today would be her last. The Zelthari speaker rose from his seat, his body made of what looked like living crystal, pale blue and glowing from within. His voice echoed through the hall. The Council has reached its decision. Humanity is hereby expelled from civilized space. You have 30 cycles to remove all personnel, all stations, all vessels from Council territory. Claire felt her heart drop, but her face remained calm. She had expected this, but hoping and knowing were different things. Around the chamber, other species watched. Some looked uncomfortable. Most looked satisfied. "The charges?" Claire asked, her voice steady. The Zelthari's crystal form brightened, a sign of pleasure among his kind. "Humanity is too violent, too aggressive. Your species has been involved in 60% of all military conflicts in the past century. Because we were defending your colonies," Claire said quietly. A Vryn delegate stood, his reptilian features twisted in what might have been contempt. "You enjoy war. It is in your nature. We have studied your history. You have never known true peace." Claire wanted to laugh at that. True peace. These species had lived in safety for so long they had forgotten what threats looked like. They had forgotten because humans had been standing guard. "We have 30 cycles?" she asked. 30 cycles. "After that, any human presence will be removed by force." The Zelthari sat down. The matter settled in his mind. Claire looked around the chamber one last time. She had friends here, or thought she had. The Perrine delegate would not meet her eyes. The Koltesh representative stared at his datapad. Only the Mayari ambassador looked sad, but her species had no vote on the council. "They were too small, too weak to matter." "Then we will leave," Claire said. She straightened her shoulders. "We came to this galaxy in peace 300 years ago. We offered friendship. We shared our knowledge. We defended those who could not defend themselves. Now you tell us to go and we will respect that decision." She paused, looking directly at the Zelthari. "But remember this moment. Remember that you chose this. We will leave in silence, but the galaxy will be different when we are gone." The Zelthari's glow dimmed slightly. Perhaps he heard something in her voice, some warning. But he said nothing. Claire walked out of the chamber, her footsteps echoing on the polished floor. Her assistant, a young man named Peter Cole, waited outside. His face was red with anger. "They can't do this," he said. "They just did." Claire kept walking toward the human embassy. "Send the message to Earth, full withdrawal. Start the protocol." Across the galaxy, the message reached every human outpost within hours. Captain Jake Morrison received it on the bridge of the EDF Valiant, a warship patrolling the frontier zones. He read it twice, not believing it the first time. "We're leaving?" his second officer asked. Amy Fisher was young, only 26, but she was sharp. She had been with Jake for 3 years. Orders from Earth. Full withdrawal. No exceptions. Jake felt tired suddenly. He was 43 and had spent half his life out here. This ship, this sector, these allies he had fought beside, all of it was ending. Sir, what about the colonies on the rim? Who will protect them? Amy's voice was worried. Jake looked at her and saw his own thoughts reflected back. Not our problem anymore, Lieutenant. The Council made their choice. The news spread through the human fleet like fire. Anger was the most common reaction. Men and women who had bled for these species now felt betrayed. There were calls for resistance, for protests, for a show of force. Some wanted to refuse the order. But Helen Cross, the director of the Human Colonial Authority back on Earth, sent a second message. It was short and clear. Comply peacefully. We leave with dignity. Take everything. Leave nothing behind. The meaning was clear to those who understood. Take everything. Not just people and ships. Everything. Dr. Peter Grant was a scientist stationed on Research Platform 7, a human facility that had been sharing data with 6 other species for 20 years. He received special instructions. Delete all collaborative files. Encrypt all human research. Leave no data behind. Peter stared at the message. 20 years of work. Cures for diseases. New technologies. Agricultural techniques that had saved billions of lives. All of it shared freely. Now they wanted it deleted. He thought about arguing, but then he remembered the vote. The Perrine he had worked with for a decade had voted to expel humanity. The Koltesh scientist who called him friend had stayed silent. They wanted humans gone. Fine, but they would not keep the gifts humanity had given. Peter started the deletion process. It would take days to remove everything properly, but he had time. 30 cycles was more than enough. On the frontier, Jake Morrison pulled his patrols back. The routes that human ships had flown for centuries, keeping pirates and raiders away, were now empty. His crew asked questions he could not answer. What would happen to the species they had protected? Who would stop the Threxian swarm now? Jake did not know. He followed his orders and moved toward Earth. The withdrawal was perfect. Humans had always been good at organization, at military precision. Within 28 cycles, every human was gone. Embassies were empty and locked. Stations were powered down. Ships departed in neat formations. Even the smallest outpost was abandoned. The other species watched them go with relief. Some with satisfaction. The humans were finally leaving. The dangerous species was departing. Peace could return. On the last day, Claire Morton stood before the Galactic Council one final time. She had been asked to give a farewell speech, but she had no interest in long words. The time for talking was done. She looked at each delegate in turn, memorizing their faces. "We came in peace," she said, her voice carrying through the silent chamber. "We leave in silence. Remember that you chose this." Then she turned and walked away. The doors closed behind her with a soft sound, final and absolute. Within an hour, her ship left Council space. The last human was gone. The galaxy felt different immediately. Emptier somehow. The Zelthari celebrated, throwing what they called a festival of peace. The Vryn military boasted about their strength, no longer needing the human warriors. Trade routes expanded into space that humans had once occupied. But in the darkness between stars, things were stirring. Things that had been kept in check for 300 years by human vigilance. Raiders who had feared human warships. Pirates who had avoided human patrols. Hostile species who had been held at the borders by human defense fleets. They noticed the silence. They noticed the absence. And they began to move. The Galactic Council chamber was different now. Half the seats were empty. Some species had lost so much they could not afford to send delegates anymore. Others had withdrawn from the council entirely, trying to defend themselves alone. The grand hall that once held 40 species now held barely 20. The Zelthari speaker stood at the center, his crystal form dim and fractured. War and economic collapse had taken their toll on his people. "We have no choice," he said, his voice lacking its former confidence. "The human terms must be accepted." There were murmurs of agreement, some reluctant, some desperate. The Vryn had already signed separate contracts with humanity. They were tired of waiting for the council to decide. General Kresh had returned 3 weeks ago with human ships, and already the situation in Vryn space was improving. The Perrine delegate, a female named Shira, stood slowly. If we sign these contracts, we give humans control of our security. We make ourselves dependent on them. We are already dependent on them, the Koltesh representative said bitterly. The difference is now we admit it and pay for it. The vote was called. It passed with only 3 opposing votes. The contracts were signed that day, transmitted to Earth and returned with human authorization. 3 years after being expelled, humanity was returning to Council space. But everything had changed. Captain Rachel Stone stood on the bridge of the HDF Sentinel, watching the jump coordinates lock in. She was 34, with 10 years of military experience and a reputation for getting things done. Behind her, a fleet of 20 warships prepared to jump into Council space. This was just the first wave. More would follow. All ships report ready, her communications officer said. Rachel looked at her crew. They were professionals, well-trained and well-paid. Human Defense Consolidated did not hire amateurs. Jump on my mark. 3, 2, 1 mark. The stars streaked and changed. They emerged in what had once been the Koltesh frontier zone, a region that had been under constant attack for months. Rachel's sensors immediately lit up with contacts. Threxian ships, at least 30 of them, surrounding a damaged colony. Battle stations, Rachel ordered. Her voice was calm. She had done this before. All ships, attack formation Beta. Target the largest vessels first. Remember, we are not here to save them for free. We are here to show what they are paying for. The human fleet moved with precision that the Threxian raiders had never seen before. The Council fleets they had been fighting were cautious, following rules and procedures. The humans had no such restrictions. They hit hard and fast, targeting engines and weapons with devastating accuracy. Within 20 minutes, 15 Threxian ships were disabled or destroyed. The rest fled, jumping away in panic. The colony was saved. Rachel received a communication from the surface, grateful voices thanking her. She acknowledged politely but did not linger. There were other colonies to secure. On Earth, Jake Morrison watched the reports come in from his office. Rachel's operation had been perfect, quick, efficient, effective. The Council was getting what they paid for, and they were paying a lot. Amy Fisher came in with updated contracts. The Perrine just signed, and the Miari are asking about protection services. Jake looked at the numbers. The income was staggering. Human Defense Consolidated would be the richest corporation in human history within a year. But the money was not the point. The point was ensuring this never happened again. What about the Zelthari? He asked. Still negotiating, Amy said. They want a discount. They say they cannot afford full rates. Jake smiled coldly. Tell them the rates are the rates. If they cannot afford protection, they should not have expelled the people who were protecting them for free. The message was sent. The Zelthari paid. Over the next 6 months, human forces spread through Council space. Outposts were established. Patrol routes reinitiated, defensive positions fortified. But these were not the same friendly outposts that had existed before. These were human territory, sovereign and independent. Council law did not apply there. The difference was obvious immediately. Human outposts followed human rules. Ships that approached without authorization were warned once, then fired upon. Raiders who attacked human-protected targets were hunted down without mercy. There were no debates about proportional response or diplomatic consequences. Humanity had been hired to provide security, and they provided it with ruthless efficiency. The Threxian swarm learned quickly. After losing 50 ships in the first month, they retreated to their home systems and stayed there. Other raider groups did the same. The message was clear. The humans were back, and they were not interested in second chances. But the relationship between humanity and the Council was not what it had been. There was no friendship now, no warmth. It was purely business. Humans provided a service. The Council paid for it. Both sides kept their distance. Commander Lucas. Bennett took charge of the new communication relay network. The old system had been jointly managed by the Council species. It had been inefficient and vulnerable. The new system was entirely human-built and human-controlled. Is it ethical to control their communications? Sophie Kane asked him one day, She had joined Human Defense Consolidated as well, working in intelligence. Lucas considered the question. They are paying us to provide infrastructure they cannot maintain themselves. We are not reading their messages or restricting their access. We are just keeping the system running. But we could read their messages if we wanted. Yes, Lucas admitted. But we do not. That would be crossing a line. Sophie looked skeptical but said nothing. She knew that Earth monitored certain communications for security reasons, but civilian traffic was left alone. Still, the power was there. Humanity could shut down galactic communications with a single command. That was influence the Council had never wanted any single species to have. Back at the Council chamber, tensions were growing. The Zelthari were angry about the costs. The Perrine felt humiliated. Even the Vryn, who had been first to hire humans back, were starting to resent the arrangement. They control everything now, the Zelthari speaker complained. Our security, our communications, even our medical supplies. We have made ourselves slaves to humanity. General Kresh, who had been invited to speak, stood slowly. He was old now, his scales gray with age. We are not slaves. We are clients. There is a difference. We pay them enormous sums while they treat us like children, Shira of the Perrine said. They patrol our space without asking permission. They build stations wherever they want. They ignore our protests. Because the contracts allow it, Kresh said tiredly. We agreed to those terms. If we do not like them, we can cancel the contracts. There was silence. Everyone knew what would happen if they canceled. The raiders would return. The pirates would come back. Within weeks, colonies would be burning again. We are trapped, the Zelthari said quietly. No, Kresh replied. We made a choice. A bad choice 3 years ago, and now we live with the consequences. If we wanted humanity as partners, we should not have expelled them. Now they are contractors, and we are lucky they agreed to come back at all. The truth of his words hung heavy in the chamber. They had created this situation. They had pushed away the one species willing to protect them freely. Now they paid the price, both financially and in pride. On a human outpost near the frontier, Rachel Stone met with a Vryn patrol commander. He wanted to coordinate their efforts against some remaining pirates. Rachel listened politely but made it clear humans would handle it their way. We appreciate your offer to help, she said, but we prefer to work independently. We are on the same side, the Vryn commander protested. We are on the side we are paid to be on, Rachel corrected gently. Right now that happens to align with your interests, but we are not your allies. We are your contractors. Remember that. The Vryn left confused and slightly offended. He reported back to Kresh, who simply nodded. He understood what the others did not. Humanity had been hurt by the expulsion. They had offered friendship and had it thrown back. They would not make that mistake again. Trust took generations to build and moments to destroy. The Council had destroyed 300 years of trust with a single vote. Now they were learning that some things, once broken, could never be fully repaired. Humanity had returned to the stars, but the galaxy they now inhabited was colder, more distant, and infinitely more expensive than before.